What is up and welcome back to Working Hard. Today's bonus episode is a bit of a different one, but we got this dilemma in the podcast email the other day and it really made me think. So I wanted to discuss it and have a bit of a discussion around it. So the dilemma was, hi Grace, I've got a dilemma for you. I'm currently in my break between uni and actual life, and I really want to put myself out there and start content creation or UGC, but I can't get over the feeling that I'll be laughed at for doing so by everyone I've ever known. How do I get over myself? You've always been so good at putting yourself out there, and I know I'll regret it if I don't at least try. So I wanted to talk about this because I feel like we all know that feeling when you watch someone launch a business or start posting vlogs or announce their new side hustle or literally do whatever that feels like outside of the norm to you. And whilst most of you is like, well done, that's amazing, a small part of you is like, oh, that's brave. And it's that feeling that I really want to get into today. That tiny little cringe feeling we get is basically our own fear of being seen trying. And today I want to have a little chat about why that fear is not only unnecessary, but it can also really hold us back. Because I genuinely think, and this is not an overstatement, the moment I stopped feeling truly embarrassed to try something in public was the moment I opened up so much more opportunity for myself. So I really want to get into this because I feel like it's a topic that I feel very passionate about as someone who's embarrassed myself a lot online, if you want to look at it that way, but also has been able to benefit a huge amount from just putting myself out there. And I guess to me, the thing has always been ranking the fear of not being able to get what I want out of life over the fear of what other people are going to think. So my first question when I knew I wanted to discuss this was, why does trying publicly feel like you're kind of volunteering for social exile? And I realized that psychologically, it really taps into one of our deepest evolutionary fears, which is rejection. So our brains are all still wired very much for tribal survival. And this sounds dramatic, but obviously back in the day, way back in the day, being kicked out of a group for standing out too much or failing too visibly could literally mean death. So now, when we're considering doing something bold in front of other people, so launching a business, sharing our art, pitching an idea, our nervous system actually reacts like we're about to get chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Obviously, that could also equate to something like a sarcastic comment online, someone taking the piss out of you, or perhaps worse, absolute silence. So no acknowledgement, no validation. And over time, if you don't really break that down and process that, then that fear actually turns into perfectionism or into hesitation or into, I'll do it when I'm ready. But if I'm honest with myself, ready is often just code for safe from embarrassment forever. I think that trying publicly is inherently messy. It asks you to be seen before you've nailed it, before you've got the outcome to justify the effort. And it is, of course, then exposure without armor. And yes, sometimes you will look like you're floundering. I very much have. I've flopped. I've launched things that didn't land. I've posted things that made me wince a year later. But one embarrassing moment doesn't actually stop the world turning. And often you're a few embarrassing moments away from actually getting where you want in life, but you holding yourself back because you can't deem to be embarrassed for 1 second is holding you back from your overall success. I also do think that this is something that British people are inherently worse at too, because we kind of go around in a perpetual state of being embarrassed, and our biggest fear is being embarrassed in front of other people. It's much cooler in the UK to not do anything and not try anything than it is to really put yourself out there. It is definitely a cultural thing we have. But I also know that the only way to desensitize yourself to fear is exposure. And the more you try publicly, the more you train your brain to survive it and eventually to thrive in it. So I think there are two main reasons why I'm such a fan of trying publicly. Number one is because it builds a level of resilience. This might sound weird, but I don't think I could ever have started a business in public if I hadn't already been that kid who wasn't afraid to try at school. Or for example, I loved music at school, and that was the least cool thing in the world. And my love for that kind of outweighed being seen as cool, and I moved schools 5 times. So you can imagine that every time me having to explain oh yeah, this is just something about me, it gets kind of knocked out of you. But you also do experience that over and over where you're like, oh God, I would be a lot more cool if I didn't just do this one thing that put me out there and then had to perform in school assembly. There is something about succeeding despite what other people think, or despite failing 3 times before, that gives you the resilience to try and fail again. And number 2, it keeps you accountable. If you have a goal at the beginning of the year to do something that scares you, the easiest way not to do it is keeping it to yourself, because then there is no external pressure. It doesn't have to be shouting about it on the internet, but saying I'm going to start a side hustle or run a 10K to a friend makes you a lot more likely to achieve it. It keeps you accountable. And on a business level, when you try publicly, you invite connection. You let people root for you. We don't trust brands that appear out of nowhere fully formed. We trust the messy ones, the evolving ones, the ones that we have seen grow. So trying and putting yourself out there publicly while you're still in a shoebox office, for example, can actually be the thing that changes your business forever. It's ironic because the thing you're afraid will make people take you less seriously, trying before you're perfect, is the very thing that makes people believe in you, especially nowadays online. And this brings me on to a bit of a personal story about the first time I decided to try publicly, which was the first time I decided to upload on YouTube, who are kindly sponsoring this video. YouTube turns 20 this year, which, I mean, for me personally, it's been a decade of using it to try in public. I started uploading videos when I was a literal teenager. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I was filming routines, talking to a camera, putting myself out there, all before I had like a narrative or brand or like basic editing skills. But YouTube let me evolve, and in fact, it expects you to evolve. That is, to me, what makes the platform so special. Unlike platforms that reward polish and brevity, YouTube makes space for long-form thought, progress over time, and storytelling that actually grows with you. So I could use it as an 18-year-old trying to work out her first year at uni. I could use it when I decided to take a different path and say goodbye to the vlogs because I was on a path to a career that made me unhappy. And I can use it now as someone who wants to run a business and wants to learn more about the world and share that with the world. And throughout all of that, I've been able to monetize my content, which means you literally see the rewards of putting yourself out there. I remember getting my first ever AdSense paycheck from my YouTube channel. I used it to go out for a little dinner celebration, and I couldn't get over how making videos, something that I was so nervous to do but now love doing so much, could actually make me money. It sounds a bit emotional, but it's true. My life, career, and my businesses have all been deeply shaped by what began as simply trying online, imperfectly, publicly, and most importantly, consistently. So if you've been thinking about starting something, a channel, a series, a personal project, genuinely just start. And happy birthday to YouTube. Thank you for letting me be a trier. It was very much needed and the perfect platform. And without YouTube, I would never be where I am today. The final thing I want to talk about is why we cringe. So cringe is such a loaded word, but most of the time when we say something is cringe, what we actually mean is that that person dared to show something that I personally am too scared to. Cringe is basically a projection of our own fear. So watching someone else be bold, imperfect, or passionate can make us feel exposed, like, oh God, like, what if I looked like that? But if you can reframe cringe as evidence of effort, everything changes. So cringe is what happens when someone shows up without knowing how they will be received, which is also what every entrepreneur, artist, writer, leader, and change maker has done ever. Cringe is basically a side effect of growth. And personally, I'd rather cringe and move forward than stay silent, stay comfortable, and stay the same. If that's not you, that is so fine, but I do think it is very important to recognize whether you are more scared of cringe or whether you are more scared of never having the life that you dreamed of for yourself. I genuinely think that is the choice the majority of the time. And of course, there is a scale. You don't need to go all the way one way or all the way the other way. But when I tell you, I got such a hard time when I started posting online. Like, I really, really did, and it really was not the coolest thing in the world. In fact, it was the least cool thing in the world, and it was looked down upon so much. And yet it's led to exactly where I am today, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And I'm sure there are some people out there that think, not that cool. And guess what? That's fine. They don't need to live my life. But let's talk about how you actually start trying in front of people without kind of short-circuiting. First of all, I would really recommend that you start small and frequent. You don't want to wait for the big launch. Try tiny things, a story, a tweet, a question. Like, let visibility become a habit of yours. Then I would really recommend that you measure meaning, not just metrics. So stop asking, did it go viral? And start asking, did this move me forward? Did this position me how I wanted it to? Did I get more used to doing this type of content by filming this? Then a really important one is to desensitize with repetition. So fear fades with exposure. The more you show up, the less scary it becomes. And you need to do that over and over and over again to really get that feeling away from yourself and start associating associating this movement in the right direction with moving in the right direction. As part of that, I would really recommend reframing embarrassment as evidence. So feeling exposed means you are out of your comfort zone. That is a marker of progress. That is not a marker of doing something wrong. Then you also really need to remember that nobody is thinking about you as much as you are. That is harsh, but it is very freeing. And I feel like most people are too busy thinking about their own stuff to actually notice your learning curve or notice what's going wrong with you or what didn't work for you. They're not paying attention. And if they're paying too much attention, then that's on them. Leave them to do that. Genuinely let them do that. That doesn't affect the way you're living. Before I wrap up, I just want to go over a question that I answered the other day online, and I feel like this highlights exactly how I feel about this topic. So the question was, how did you overcome your fear of putting yourself out there? And my response was, I think my desire to build the exact life I want and to have the freedom to do so has genuinely outweighed the fear of looking silly. At least that's the only explanation I can think of. I was so embarrassed at uni, constantly posting on social media and starting my businesses online. It definitely wasn't the done thing, and I heard and saw a lot of shit about myself, as well as not feeling successful. I'm not even sure what I've done now would be considered successful, given it's been done by leveraging social media rather than pure finance or law or tech, and social media was definitely looked down upon where I went to university. But I think that at the end of the day, a successful life built in other people's eyes is a successful life for them, not you. That's something I'm trying to really internalize and get to grips with as I try to design the next stage of my life. I've always been really proud of myself for going for gold, even when it might make me look silly. I've started multiple businesses when they absolutely could have flopped after the first, this time in front of a huge audience with a personal brand that relies on business success. I posted my podcast for a long while before it got any real engagement. I just started a new business in AI because I believe in the concept when it'll be really tough to crack. But I consider all this one of my biggest strengths, not being afraid to look stupid, building a life that only I am going to have to live. And I think that's a really great strength. And that is what I believe. Anyway, thank you to the person who sent in this dilemma. I know you wanted to be kept anonymous, but it really got me thinking. And I'm glad we got to speak about this in a bonus episode because I feel like it is an important one to think about. And I feel like, especially in the world where visibility is more likely to lead to success, you can decide not to take certain shortcuts if you see them as that, and shortcuts being putting yourself out there and being unafraid to fail in public, but you can't expect always the same results. And I think that that's fine if you're fine with that, but I think a lot of the time we can spend too much time wishing for the results of a certain thing without being willing to do that certain thing. And I feel like that is sometimes just an important bit of tough love we need. But thank you so much for being here, and I will see you again on Monday.